YouTubers, Iceman22ST coming to you from Grandpa's garage. My last video, when I was showing the screw holding screwdrivers, a question arose from Cecil. He was asking about the difference between Phillips and Robertson screws. Phillips screws, you know, they're cross-shaped. Although they are not a cross screw, there is such a thing as a cross. And basically a cross screw, it's two slots. So it's not a cross, it's not a star, because there are star screws as well. It's a Phillips. It's not a posi drive, which has little tinier points in it that gives you 8 points of contact, but doesn't give you much more grip. Robertson screws are square, and the reason I wasn't showing you how the Robertson screwdriver or the Phillips screwdriver fit in the Robertson, the only reason was, being, you know, square shaped head, the Phillips screw head would fit inside, just because you know it's like, you know, square peg, square hole type thing. But the difference is, basically one is square shaped. There are square screws, but that's a different thing again. Now, just a bit of history on it. A guy named Robertson, a Canadian, invented the Robertson screws back in 1909, I think it was, or 1910 or something, and got it patented right after that. And he licensed manufacturer for Europe over in England. He licensed somebody in England to manufacture them for the European market. When it came to the American market, Henry Ford wanted to use Robertson screws in their cars, in the Model Ts. But Henry Ford being stubborn and Robertson being equally stubborn, Ford wanted to buy the licensing so he could make his own. Basically bypass Robertson, so Robertson would get a small fee, and that would be it. And Robertson was too stubborn to sell it to him, because he figured he was going to get a lot of money from Henry Ford, I guess, or something. So Robertson screws were used by Ford around 1910, 1915, around that age, on the Model Ts, but only the ones made in Canada. Now, there were Phillips screws on them, there were Robertson screws in them. The American-made Model Ts had Phillips screws. Now, Phillips screws are, you know, they're commonly used for drywall screws, and that's what I have here because I don't have any. I tend not to use Phillips screws when I can help it because of my personal opinion on how much better Robertson screws are. I don't even keep slotted screws, I throw them out. And Phillips, I'll keep them if they're new, or obviously if they're drywall screws or something. A couple of reasons I like the Robertson screw over the Phillips screw. This is one of my newest Phillips screwdrivers. Brand new Phillips screw. Okay, so I put it on there. It's on there. Watch what happens though. So, when Greg Porter was trying to put his headlights back in his Karmann Ghia, he had Phillips screws that were recessed in around the headlight bezels and the headlight mounts, and that was a problem. You can get around that by magnetizing your screwdriver if the screws are magnetic, but then sometimes it's a pain in the ass to get the magnetism back out. That's why I liked those screw holding screwdrivers. So that's Phillips with a fairly new screwdriver and a brand new screw. Now I don't have any used Robertson screws here, but I do have one of my older Robertson screwdrivers. Now, when Robertson designed the screwdrivers and the screws, he designed them so there's a very slight outward taper on the screwdriver bit and in the hole. And what that allowed was cold forging. So with what was called the square drive screws, they had to be hot forged so they could get the tooling back out of the hole, because if you cold forged and it was perfectly parallel sides, it stands to reason that you're not going to have a good time or an easy time getting the tooling out of the screws you're making. Robertson put that slight taper on so he could cold forge the screws. It was a lot cheaper to make them. And another thing he did was, on most Robertson screwdrivers to this day, the tip is removable. It's made to be replaced, although I don't know of anyone that has ever replaced a screwdriver tip in a Robertson screwdriver, and I don't know if they even sell them. But they have all been made that you could pull those out and put a new one in. That was the original plan. Now this is a 4-inch screw, so it's obviously a lot heavier and bigger than the Phillips drywall screw I had, and my older screwdriver. So I'll put it on, same thing, give it some pressure. Now it's on there, 4-inch screw. But watch what happens when I try to go horizontal with it. It stays on. Watch what happens when I try to go vertical with it. Still stays on. Watch this. Take the screw, let go of the screwdriver. That's one of the reasons I like Robertson screws over Phillips. And the Americans are starting to get them now. They're called square drive, although they aren't truly a square drive. They are Robertson, but I guess it's copyrights and all sorts of things. Now, the other reason I like Robertson screws over Phillips is the way they can be driven in. And I'm going to show you that right now. I've got a Phillips number 2 bit, and it's a brand new bit. And I'll take the drywall screw and I'll put it in to this 2x3 piece of wood. And I'm sitting, partially because my legs are screwed up today and I'm not too steady, but partially because at arm's length, how much pressure can I put on this? And watch how the Phillips screw will go in. It would help if I was on forward. Okay, see, it's bottomed out, but this is actually a fairly soft piece of wood. If I had a harder piece, you would notice a difference, because what would happen, actually I'm going to grab a piece of hardwood that I have sitting over here, or a piece of oriented strand board or something. Okay, I found the perfect subject. Found some free firewood yesterday, and it was offcuts from a company that makes stairs. So this is 4 pieces of about 3/4 inch plywood laminated together. It's an offcut from one of their products. So I think my table just broke. It did. So just use the jaw on the other end. That's come apart before on me, and I just, maybe after I film this, I'll actually take the time to fix it right. This is such an old Black & Decker workmate. It's still the cast aluminum one. It's one of the, like the original ones that came out. Okay, there's my plywood. And my screw, brand new screwdriver. And I've got a coarse thread Phillips of I'd say it's about a 1-inch screw. And I'm going to put it into the plywood. Arm's length. Okay. Now I'm going to go with 1.5 inch and see what happens. Okay, you hear that? That's called camming out. Phillips screws were actually originally made so they would cam out. So it saved your screwdriver bit and it saved your work. The only problem is, you know what a stripped screw head is like. Now, I'm going to take my Robertson. If I can find the Robertson head I dug out. Dropped it on the floor. Okay. Relatively new but slightly used Robertson number 2 and the Robertson 4-inch screw. Now I ran 4 inches of screw in there before it stopped. Now if I was to put force on that, I drove it another 1/8 of an inch in. You see that? I'm still driving it farther in. So I drove that 4-inch screw 2.5 inches out the other side. So that's how far in that Robertson screw is. Phillips, they're just below the surface before that one cammed out and that one just spun loose. Now granted, the threads on the drywall screws aren't really meant to be, you know, it's a little bit unfair using a wood screw against the drywall screw, but the drywall screws actually are made to go into wood. Now, I'm going to take another Robertson. This one has a little bit of wear on it. I'm going to see what I can do with it. Same piece of plywood. I'm going to put pressure on this time. Okay, let's go back to Phillips. And I'll see if I have any longer ones. I do. I've got somewhere in here. Don't. I wish I had the same length, but basically these will barely get under the surface and stop. Whereas a Robertson, as long as you still have a bite, it's going to just keep tearing it in. So that's basically the difference between the Phillips and Robertson screws. The Robertson being really quite a lot easier to use. I noticed a few days ago VW Darren was filming Hans putting the wood in their boat, and you could hear the drill camming out of the screw, and Hans couldn't get it all the way in. And Darren got in the boat and managed to get it almost flush, but it cammed out. And that's what happens with Phillips screws with harder wood. Robertsons, you could break the heads off of them sometimes, actually, if they stall out. You can, if your drill has enough torque, you can actually break them off before they'll cam out on you. And the only reason they actually do cam out is because you use the wrong size bit, or the bit is just really worn and it's rounded off and it's going to skip out on you. So I hope that answers your question, Cecil. and gonna let everybody go. It's a beautiful day out. It's +2 today, which, you know, uncharacteristic of our weather. We're normally, you know, 2.5, 3 feet of snow and 20 below, and we had that cold weather last week where we were 30 below with a 41 below wind chill, and -40 Celsius is the same as -40 Fahrenheit, so you know how cold that was. Refreshing. And I guess you guys caught my demonstration of my hot coffee going to steam. There you go. I drove those things halfway through the plywood, because those were 4-inch screws, and that's about 2 inches sticking through. And they're in there. Anyway, I'm going to let everybody go, and I hope this provided some information for you. And one other thing, Cecil, I know you keep calling it lead, and to me, I understand, you know, it's kind of like calling Kleenex when it's toilet tissue, or Xerox machines for photocopiers. So when you say lead, you know, I know what you're talking about, so it doesn't bother me. Call it lead, because that's the process you're doing is like leading anyways. And that's actually interesting to watch. I've often thought of doing that whenever I did a car, and with the new leadless solder. It's even more intriguing because you don't have the chemical exposure that you do to lead. But I had never had occasion to do it yet, and having watched you do it, and you know, I think you were a little hard on yourself, because it was turning out pretty good. I think a little bit of practice, and you're going to be a pro at it, because you even look at your A-pillar repair and how much it improved, and the repair by your wheel well there, how vastly you improved on that one. I would be tempted to try it, just for the sake of knowing how to do it old school. But then again, I kind of like doing, you know, hand fabricating panels instead of buying them. Whenever I've done rust repairs, I've always made my own. In fact, every time the English wheels go on sale at Princess Auto, I think of buying one. They have the English wheels here that's similar to the one at Harbor Freight. They're $500 up here, and I don't know what they are at Harbor Freight. I never bothered to look because I don't go into the States too often. But a friend of mine went down and bought one about 3 years ago, and boy, does he know how to use. There's a guy that knows how to use tools. Maybe in a future episode, if I'm at his place, I'll show you one of the things he did, which was he's working on a Henry J. Kaiser, and there's a pot metal piece of trim that goes around the edge of the headlights, and he had one, but he didn't have one for the other side, so he decided he was going to try and make one out of just regular metal, because he's making it into a bit of a hot rod. He wanted to have something he could weld on, and then he's going to blend it in. And so he took, you know, he has a shrinker stretcher, and he's got a roller, a bead roller, and he's got the English wheel, and he's a very meticulous guy. And he made the piece and polished it up, and it was so smooth it looked better than the original part. Like it was a glass. It looked like it was chromed. It was such a smooth surface. And, you know, I envy him for his skills. Mind you, he tends to be very meticulous. It's just the way he is. And he requires that for his job, because he overhauls turbine engines, and you're dealing with 10,000ths of an inch clearances, and so he's quite good at it, and I would like to try and do that someday. But Anyway, I'm going to let you go. I'm babbling now. So, I hope you like my little demonstration of Robertson screws, and if you guys find them down in the States and you try them, you'll never, whenever you can, you're not going to go back to Phillips. I'd almost put money on it. Phillips are good, but Robertson, man, you just can't beat it. Proof is in the pudding. You know, it's. I showed you. You know, I wish I did have regular wood screws though, but I looked around and I just don't have any because I don't keep them because I prefer Robertsons. So, and when we buy wood screws up here, they're Robertsons. I just, you know, it just makes a lot more sense. Anyway, gonna let you go. This is going on and on again. So, catch you later.